Hey all, welcome to Circular Tone, and today it's Iron Maiden, vintage Iron Maiden. So let's get straight to the music. If you like these type of videos, like if you can't afford my music or my distortion pedal or the other stuff I've got coming out, just liking and subscribing that really helps me out. So if you just give me 1 second and like and subscribe, let's get to the music. I'm going to get killed if I get this wrong because they have the most rabid fans in the world. And Circular Tone. Clamp! And we're back. So, that was tough. This was impossible. This took me a month of planning, and I could not get it right. And as it happens, it was just per chance with me doing my research. Like, I watched probably 4 hours of Iron Maiden documentaries. I watched countless internet posts. I looked at images online, and it's actually a chance stumbling across on this image where I kind of put a few of the pieces together. I actually ordered that microphone, not the exact one, but the same capsule and everything. It's just a different, has a switch on, an on-off switch, that type of thing. So this is the mic, and that was key. It's let's get to the gear. Let's get straight into it. It was the frequencies all fell into place. There's a secret to this tone, and it partially is the microphone. Very specific type of tone on it. It's really, really vibey and aggressive and snarky and a very strange shape to it. It's almost like a SM57, but with all the good bits taken out, but it still works. It's weird, like a ratty type of microphone, and I loved it. But the secret was the distance from the cab. Like modern music, like 80% of what you hear on metal albums is probably an SM57, just as close to the speaker as they can almost get. There's probably two SM57s at different angles. So that's probably what you're hearing on most of these metal albums. So what did I do different? I did hear the frequencies folded into place when I bought that microphone. But I was still getting too much of the scritchy, scratchy top end. I was getting too much of the pokey mids. The secret was to pull the microphone back. I was back about a foot, maybe just under a foot. If you check this picture, this is the exact miking I used. You can hear the guitars isolated online, and when I did, there was a surprising amount of low end in there, considering that they used this microphone. So they either manipulated the crap out of it with the old console that they had, or they added extra mics like ribbon mics, maybe a sub mic, that type of thing. Might have even been just the general room bleeding in. So, you know, you get the reflections of the bass coming back into the microphones and into the sides, and then it just swells up into this beast. So that's what I did. I tried to recreate the, you know, the warmth of tape and all the rest of it, and there was also a slap, maybe not a slap. I think it was a plate reverb. I think it was a studio plate reverb that was also on the guitars. Pretty much drenched everything, but on the guitars it was subtle. So I did that as well. I recreated it. Iron Maiden. Let's have a little story time about my relationship with Iron Maiden. If I knew the truth, I would have been an Iron Maiden fan. This is weird, right? I was a thrash kid, into the early Metallica, Slayer. I thought that Slayer and Metallica riffs were attainable. It wasn't this mythical sword-wielding Iron Maiden creature, which was like fantastical. I couldn't put my mind. I was more streets. And if I'd known the origin of Iron Maiden, which was nothing but the streets, you know, the rough and ready leather jacket and, you know, spit and sawdust, I would have been into it. I didn't know that Iron Maiden were earning £30, £40 a week when they were already in the charts. I didn't know that. If I knew that they were more like me, like struggling, I probably would have been into them. It's weird. It's a weird thing when you get into the mind of musicians and metal kids, because they were touring on this bus called the Green Goddess, and they were so poor. You know, this was they went through about 10 different musicians before they got to the, you know, Iron Maiden, the good album. So what happened? They were taking gigs on New Year's Eve just because they paid a little bit extra, and they were sleeping on this bus, and they'd wake up with their clothes frozen because of sweat. They didn't have showers. They didn't have anything. They really grinded. I feel for Paul Di'Anno, because he was a young kid with no like training, and if you look at the live shows, he gave it everything from the throat, which kills you. And they're playing 5 gigs a week and not paying any money. And he was self-medicating with alcohol, you know, because he was beating himself up. I know from experience, I know as a guitarist and a thrash musician, how much a gig takes out of you. And I was doing like 1 a week, and that was kicking my ass. And I was like a teenager. So imagine him giving his all every night with no structure to help him, with no decent managers, you know. So no wonder he burned out and just kind of fizzled out. So I respect him. I wish there was somebody there, you know, back in the day that could have helped him to keep going, because I kind of fell in love with Iron Maiden doing this album, the early Iron Maiden stuff. And I want to get to the Bruce Dickinson era now, and there's more weirdness, and we'll get into that. Okay, before we go into the Bruce Dickinson era, let's talk more about the gear. This is by far the nerdiest I've ever gotten with trying to recreate a band. This is the closest I've got, in my opinion, and the most effort I've put into it. Like, I had to buy Let's see. They used, let's get to the gear, let's get right into it. Ooh, no, this is vintage. It's all hooked up to life support. They used a Plexi, and I used the exact era Plexi that they used. People, the internet's wrong. They claim that they used a JCM 800. They weren't out doing the recording of that album, so they used a Plexi. There's lots of photographic evidence of it, of them using it. They also used a vintage MXR microamp in front of it, and on the other side they used a vintage MXR Distortion Plus, which I also used. Out of shot, which I can't get my hands on, they also used a 10-band MXR EQ, the old school type, the one with the fixed power cord and all that. I used that too. So all this was boosting the amp, and I put so much effort into this. It's insane. I borrowed cabinets because the internet told me that they used 65s. And that isn't true because I mic'd them up. They sounded nothing like it. Ironically, the first thing that I mic'd up was the right speaker, but I had the wrong microphone on it. So I finally thought, oh my God, I'm going to use a Blackback. I used an old Celestion Blackback from the mid-70s with this microphone, and all the frequencies just fell into place. And I was like, it's still not right, but it's there. And I pulled the mic back after like 20 takes. Boom. It was almost like I was in a room with Iron Maiden. I was like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. And they also used a mix of guitars. I used, obviously, a Les Paul style with a high output pickup, because that's what they used. And I also used a Super Strat. So one used the Strat, one used the Les Paul. And they both had upgraded pickups. They didn't use single coils on it. They had old Duncans. Was it? Yeah, I think it was old Seymour Duncan's installed. So that's what I went with on this. And on this, I went with a Gibson Dirty Fingers from 81. So much work went into this. Definitely the nerdiest thing I've ever done. This the most in-depth that I've gone in both researching. You know, I spent hours watching documentaries, hours on the internet, and this is what we got. I hope I got close. You know, sometimes you get so close to it, 100 takes later, and I think I'm close, but I might not be. I've done that. I've been guilty of that in the past, where I get too close to something, and then when a month later, I'm like, that doesn't sound that right, but I think I got there this time. So, Bruce Dickinson era, right? I actually didn't like Iron Maiden, largely because of talent. I was the thrash kid. What I saw with Slayer and Metallica was jeans and a t-shirt, and it was obtainable to me. I could actually play that stuff. I could be these people. When I saw Bruce Dickinson standing on a stage with lights and millions of people and Eddie, and his voice was ridiculous, I was like, this is not my realm. I can't achieve this. It's like the Led Zeppelin Golden God type of thing, where they're up here and I'm down there. That's why I couldn't get into it. But after watching these documentaries and seeing the struggle that they had, they were me. They were a struggling guy putting everything into their music. Bruce Dickinson didn't do that scream. He didn't wander into there with a glass of champagne and did that scream. He took days over it, and he was throwing chairs around the studio, and he was being pushed to his breaking point by the producer, who knew he had it in him. So that's what I love about this. It's just like the whole thing is passion and determination and strength and everything that's good about metal. And I ignored it. And now I've fallen in love with Iron Maiden doing this. It's like they struggled so hard. They got paid no money. Even when Run to the Hills was out, they bumped them up to something like £50 a week. £50 a week on the road is just nothing. It's unbelievable to think of what they were doing and where they were playing and the crowds that they were looking at. And the management were like, oh yeah, what we did, we put all the money back into the band, for the show, and bullshit. That they got ripped off big time. And yes, they had a big show, but come on. If you see the size of the crowds and how much they were in the goddamn charts, they got ripped off. They think that their managers are like, best mates and all that. And they're in a good place now. But those early guys were ripped off, man. It sucks. But I hope they got enough writing credits. I hope they get enough residuals from the early albums. And obviously they have the swagger, because in my opinion, I know this is very divisive, that first album was the best. And it was great listening to the Soundhouse tapes and the struggle. The Green Goddess was the one that got me. Their old touring band where they were just frozen in fields. You know, it resonated with me so much because I've done the same thing. You know, where you find yourself in situations, you know, just trying to keep it going, and they kept it going. And the bass player is the phenomena in this band. How could he write Phantom of the Opera on 4 strings? That thing, I couldn't get my head around it. I was almost like swallowing my tongue. How was Phantom of the Opera a thing back in that year? It's unbelievable. I couldn't get my head around it. The timing of that thing doesn't make any sense. If it doesn't make, it's all feel. It's the whatever he's doing with his fingers isn't in any type of time signature that I could figure out. I was like, when is he hitting the triplet? What? I couldn't figure it out. And listening to the MIDI files, you know, trying to get it like on computerized, that wasn't getting it either. Iron Maiden's time signatures, they flow. It's all from jamming. It's all from thousands of hours of them playing that track and just locking in together, you know. And God bless the drummer, he didn't have that much time on it, but he kind of like nailed it back in the day. Because the classic lineup of Iron Maiden, that's really half of them, half of the guys that were on this album, and it's pretty crazy when you think about it. Actually, it was 2 people. It was less than half. So much respect for that band now. After this, after digging, after seeing the interviews, I know interviews and documentaries can really glamorize some aspects of it. So, but I feel bad for a lot of the early musicians that didn't make the cut. But Steve Harris, you know, to keep up with him, you've got to be a certain type of individual, and maybe they didn't have it, you know. But I think if they knew what was on the horizon, they would have picked it up, you know, the millionaire status. Like the last thing I watched was Nicky McBrain with his Jaguar cars and all this type of stuff. So now he's living the life. He just lives down the road from me. So yeah, Diano, dude, call me if you need another guitarist. Let's reboot this shit, dude. Let's write new tunes. Get with me. We can get this shit going. So I've been Owen, Circle Tone. Please share this with your Iron Maiden friends. It would really help me out. You know, I'm a new fan. I can't stop playing that first album, and now I know what they put into the other stuff. I'm gonna, you know, get into the rest of the discography. So this is one thrash guy moving over into the metal, the new wave, British heavy metal, and you know, can't fault it. I learned so much from these, including the studio. It's practically, you try and find the pictures and video of the studio that they recorded that album in. Little challenge. It like doesn't exist. It's like this weird studio of 3 different names, which kind of is there, but I'll put up as many pictures as I can while I'm blabbing on about it. And ironically enough, when it came to recording that first album, they got one guy in who was the guitarist of the Suite, and you know, he was famous for their great production sound as well. So you know, he came in and told Harris, "How about you play with a pick instead of your fingers? How about you try and do the Mona Lisa with chalk?" It's like, what an idiot. So he was out, and ironically, the producer that they did bring in turned out to be a complete lazy bastard. And it was their engineer that saved the day for them. The engineer actually saved their bacon, put the time in, and you know, mic'd everything up wonderfully, got that amazing sound. And I think they could have spent more time on the vocal aspect. He needed more direction, because when he's singing it, the "Are you in this a little pain? It doesn't match up." You know what I mean? They should have simplified the lyrics to actually phonetically flow. Well, who might say? Well, but I think the singer needed the most guidance, the most manager help, the hand on the shoulder, the breathing exercises, the money, the resources. He could have gone on to such great things, because he was I think he was a big draw for those early Iron Maiden shows and kind of got the pedestal for, you know, what happened. So I've been Owen. This is Circular Tone. Please subscribe. Please like. Please comment. Tell me if you think I got it right. And have a good one.